I'm Vinzer Flynn, and welcome to FlynnNet. Today, it's Building with Vinzer, and I'll show you how I go about turning some EVA foam into a Mandalorian helmet. And I love a good mashup helmet, so today's project is going to be a Deadpool version. But before we get going, here's some tips I've picked up along the way to help you get started.
First, you've got to decide what you want to build, which is the second hardest part. The hardest part is getting started on it and seeing it through to a finish. A big build can seem overwhelming and discourage you. The first time I looked at all the plans for an Iron Man suit, I nearly pushed it all out the window. The trick to making progress is to break it down into manageable pieces. Set a goal for a session, like cutting out the templates or assembling just one part, and before you know it, things are happening. And odds are, you'll do more than your goal once you started. And while sticking to your work is important, don't forget to take breaks or you'll burn out and get sick of the whole thing. As excited as you may be about your build, you may find yourself talking about it more than working on it. At the end of the day, it's up to you to get it done, but sometimes it's good to work in a group. Besides being fun, it's a great way to draw on each other's energy, help each other out, and it works. Your only other option is to have me come over and stare at you until something gets done. This has been proven to be highly effective. Something really important to keep in mind is whatever you're building probably isn't going to come out the way you pictured it in your head the first time, and that's okay. You're going to get better the more you do it, so just keep at it. I've learned more from the dozen Mando helmets that went wrong than the ones that went right, so don't worry too much about perfection right off the bat. And speaking of that, it's the cosplayer's curse that we see every little imperfection in what we build. But no one else does. All they see is the awesome thing you've made. So don't let one little part ruin your fun, because it's still going to pass the magical 5-foot photo factor. Because at the end of the day, why else are we doing this if not to have fun with it? Okay, we're about to start our Mando helmet, and remember, this is just one of many ways to go about this, so always research other videos and tutorials on the subject of your build, because there's a lot of great ones out there, and the more info and ideas you have, the better. In any event, here's how Vinzer does it. First thing you'll need are some templates, and sites like the RPF are a great resource to find all kinds of them. For our purposes, we'll be using some Jango Fett helmet plans unfolded specifically for foam, as opposed to the more nightmarishly detailed paper Pepakura. Next, you'll need the program to view these files. A quick Google search for Pepakura Viewer will find the site. Download and install that. Now you can view your plans and have them on hand for reference as you build. This free version of the program doesn't have print capability, but I'll show you a couple ways to get those templates onto paper. As you get a feel for this stuff, you'll learn which pieces you don't actually need to cut out for foam, like that visor piece or that big fucking bottom neck piece. Also, fuck that antenna too. I'll show you a more foam-friendly alternative, or you may want none at all. You'll also note how even with the foam plans, the templates often try to get you to make all these folds to create depth, which the foam is already doing. So depending on the part, you may just need to trace out the general shape without the tabs around it. Okay, so the software is taken care of. Let's look at the hardware and materials we're going to need. Okay, the first thing you're going to need is a cutting board for your foam, or in my case, a computer desk I've been slowly destroying for years. A big roll of EVA foam from the flooring section of Canadian Tire. The rolls work best for this sort of thing. You'll need a heat gun, Dremel rotary tool, a low temperature glue gun, dollar store version works just fine, and a shitload of glue sticks. Cutting blades, just about any will do as long as the blade is nice and sharp. You'll be replacing the blades fairly often. White glue and water for sealing. Clear plastic of one sort or another, I'll get into more of that later, and 80% window tinting from the Canadian Tire Automotive section for your visor. Painter tape and Gorilla tape. Regular white paper and a pencil for tracing out templates. Spray paint in whatever your color scheme's going to be. Various brushes and colors of acrylic paint for detailing. You'll definitely want some black and some silver for battle damage. Whoops, almost forgot the scissors, need those. Some sandpaper, which I just realized I already had on the table. Some DAP style wall filler, or modeling clay would do, for filling in seams on the helmet. I probably forgot something, but that's most of it. Anyway, we're ready to get started.
As I mentioned, the free version of the viewer doesn't have printing ability, so you can either opt to buy the program, dick around in Photoshop, or use this low-tech method. Luckily these days it's pretty easy to hook a larger TV screen into your computer and you can literally trace the templates off the screen. Sounds silly, but almost everything I've ever built got started this way, and I've got a storage closet packed full of Iron Men. The trick here is the scaling. Each one of these sections is a legal sized piece of paper, so with a little scrolling back and forth, you can match up the 8.5-inch top of the section to a standard piece of paper and you've got your default scale. Mando helmets at this scale seem to be a good fit for everybody, so we can start tracing. Always keep the patterns handy to look at because often there are pieces that are mirrored, so you'll have to flip your pattern and trace out its counterpart. Cut out your patterns once traced and label everything. It'll save you a ton of hassle later. Mirrored parts, I always put a little X2 on it to remind me to flip and trace another. Trace out your patterns onto the EVA foam and start cutting them out. Keep your blade straight up and down as you do the cuts, and as soon as you feel like you're not getting a good cut, change the blade out because foam dulls it fairly quick. I usually start with the dome and work my way out, but it's easy to lose track of parts because they all look alike, so mark them. Most people draw lines or labels on them to show where they connect. I use dots, whatever keeps track of them. Start hitting it with the heat gun until it becomes nice and pliable so you can shape it. You'll actually be able to see the texture of the foam change as you blast it, which is also good for helping to seal it. Once heated up, wrestle that bitch into shape. For curved parts, a shaping tool is useful, though I end up using a doorknob half the time. Time to start hot gluing. The key to getting decent seams is to take your time. Trying to glue a long piece all at once and you discover you need about 4 more hands to hold it all together, and then you've got glue seeping all over the place and you've burned yourself. Just do a few dots at a time and slowly join them together. Although you're probably still going to burn yourself. This is a great time to binge some Netflix because you're going to be standing around holding shit together while it dries forever. The main section of the helmet sticks out just a bit from the dome, so glue accordingly and it will create that right look of depth. The back piece goes in at a different depth too, but bear in mind, the style of this helmet is one of many ways to go about it. You can style your helmet and armor in a ton of different ways and it still retains that Mando look. Next are the under cheek pieces, which are the trickiest part of the structure and will require some practice. Again, don't worry if it doesn't come out perfect the first time. No two Mando helmets are quite the same anyway. The cheek pieces take the longest to glue in because of the weird angles, but just go a little bit at a time and glue the insides as well to keep it all in place. Then we'll glue on the main cheek pieces, which are a little easier. And if you think any of this so far is tricky, wait till you try and decide on a color scheme, let alone a name. Once the cheeks are in there, don't be afraid to give the whole thing some rough love and bend things closer to their proper shape. We'll add braces to it all, but it will help to wrestle that foam upwards a bit. Next we'll add the earpieces and some craft foam details on the back and sides. I opted for a shark fin antenna on my own helmet, but you can go any way you like for one, or none at all. And don't forget to give those craft foam parts a blast with a heat gun. Now we'll put in some little supports so the helmet retains its shape. This lets you customize your T-visor shape and angle a little. Just glue the ends, that way it leaves a little space for the visor to be held in there later. Next we'll give the dome seams a little sanding in preparation for putting filler in there. There are methods for getting a more seamless dome which we'll probably take a look at down the road, but today we're just going to go with the quick, easy, and cheap method, and once we get to the paint and battle damage, no one is going to notice those lines anyway, especially in photos. So, using some DAP wall filler or some modeling clay with a touch of water, you can rub some into the seams with just your finger and then sand it down again. Time to seal the helmet to prepare for painting. Plastidip works great, it's just a more expensive option, and after having a few cans malfunction and make a big mess, I went back to using a 1-to-1 mix of white glue and water. I find 4 to 6 coats gets the job done just fine. Once you've decided on your colors and pattern, no easy thing, tape things off and start painting. Don't give in to the urge to overspray and end up with a gloppy job. Do nice even passes, let it dry, and come back shortly for another coat. Remove the tape carefully and let things dry before going on to the next colors. If some of the paint peels up, and it happens, well, you found a nice spot for some battle damage, so don't sweat it. Next is the fun part. With some silver and black acrylic paint and your choice of brush, you can start adding battle damage. I like the sponge brush because it lets you do heavy chunks of damage as well as lightly brushed on scrapes. You can place the brush on an edge and sort of flick inward to get a nice scraping effect. In general, you want to go along the edges, places where wear and tear would naturally occur. You may want to explore other visor options later, but I found this method works nicely. The plastic backing from a lamination kit makes a pliable yet sturdy visor backing. Trace out the T-visor shape. Make it a little bigger than needed, as each helmet is different and you'll want to trim it down until it fits right. Note how the shape of it at the top curves because it's going to be bent back inside the helmet. Cut out a piece of the window tinting the size of the plastic sheet. Don't worry about wasting the excess. Trying to cut out the tinting to the exact shape of the visor from the start is a serious pain and very easy to misalign when applying the tint, so just do the whole page. Tape the plastic sheet down. Then, using 2 pieces of painter's tape on either side of the tinting, you can pull the tinting open, revealing the sticky side. I sort of discovered this part by accident, but it works. It's sticky stuff, so go slowly, but you should be able to rub the tinting right onto the plastic with nothing more than your finger. I found this plastic type takes the tinting really well and with minimal air bubbling. Just slowly expose the sticky part and rub it down as you go, bit by bit. Now you can trim the T-visor out. Gently maneuvering it into those little notches we left in the structure supports, you can determine how much you need to trim it down to fit. Now we'll glue in some black craft foam to ensure there's a nice dark field behind the main face of the visor. With the visor trimmed to the right size, we can install it and trim off the excess at the bottom. The inside is just held in place with Gorilla Tape, strong enough to keep it in place, but not so permanent you can't take it out or replace it later. And because this is a Deadpool helmet, we add some white craft foam for the eyes. And that's it. You might need some padding to fit your fat head in there comfortably, but you're on your own for that. Well, that's it for today. Hopefully you got something useful out of that. If you have any questions about helmets, armor, or anything else, drop me a line. Good night, and remember, Phoenix sucks.